It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is the Locked On Auburn Podcast, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast, presented by Fetch Me Home Delivery. Use Fetch Me 20 for your first delivery free. We talked a lot about the Iron Bowl yesterday, and I guess surprising to no one, a lot of folks tuned in to that one. I'm sure a lot more will today. There's so much excitement around this Auburn football program right now. I mean, holy cow. It's amazing. It really is amazing what one win can do to a program. And, you know, a lot of folks that I really respect have kind of labeled what happened on Saturday a program-changing win. You kind of felt that way after the 2017 Iron Bowl win, and you really hadn't felt anything else like that since then until this past Saturday. And it kind of gives you hope. It kind of gives you hope that the offense is going to be able to get something going, maybe in the bowl game. You know, you're hearing a lot of folks saying Auburn going to Orlando to take on either Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota. Those are kind of the most popular three destinations. I really haven't seen any other projections that doesn't have Auburn not in Orlando. So that would be cool. A New Year's Day bowl in the Citrus Bowl. So that'd be fun. Going to do a lot of voicemail today. 205-502-4285 is how you can be a part of the show. And you can probably tell I'm in the studio I do not like, so the sound quality is a little different. So apologies on that. But all right, let's get things going.
Hey, guys.
Got to start it off with that one. All right, let's do this thing.
Hey, Zach, this is James Coker. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. And I'm very surprised that Auburn, with the amount of points scored, pulled it out. I really think that we should probably hire a offensive coordinator that actually does know something different than Gus's little playbook, because the Alabama win does not this Alabama win does not cover up the Florida, LSU, and Georgia losses. So it's great game. I had to take a drive after halftime just to cool down, because I was a little annoyed, but everything's good. War Eagle, guys.
Thanks, James. Yeah, James is a fraternity brother of mine. Good to hear from you, buddy. Hope you're doing well. Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of folks felt that going into the Iron Bowl. I think coming out of the Iron Bowl, I think a lot of people have kind of forgotten about a lot of that. And, you know, I predicted this. If Auburn was to beat Alabama, though I predicted Alabama to win, I was wrong on there, which I know if you're listening, you're happy I was wrong. But I think a lot of folks have kind of looked past that now, because that's what happens if you can beat Alabama. And especially the way that they did it, I think people are going to look past that. I think optimism is around this program again, and that's the power of beating your rival. And, you know, Malzahn has beaten Saban 3 times. Nobody else in the conference can come close to that. And I think that says a lot. I think it says a lot that Auburn's not afraid of Alabama, that Malzahn is not afraid of Coach Saban, and especially at the end, he outcoached him. As far as the offense goes, it needs to get better, and I'm curious to see how much of it is scheme, how much of it was execution by Bo Nix. We'll only be able to tell that by kind of seeing how Bo develops. Malzahn called Bo Nix a winner on the television broadcast in the postgame. He said that he'd win a championship by the time he's done here, talking about at Auburn. So that'll be interesting to see. I think the offense is going to develop and evolve as Bo Nix gets better as a quarterback. And we'll see what that looks like going in next year. I bet we see a big step in the bowl game, regardless of who Auburn plays. You know, there's so much talk about, you know, who they play and do bowl games matter, and, you know, should they redo the bowl system? The biggest thing about making a bowl, if you're not in the college football playoff or you're not in one of the big ones, which I guess you could argue how big is the Citrus Bowl? It's on a New Year's Day. It's a New Year's Day bowl, so I think you take that if you're Auburn, no doubt about it. But the big thing is you get an extra month of practice. I mean, I remember a few years ago when Auburn made the Birmingham Bowl, the big thing was, okay, Auburn needs to get 6 wins to get to a bowl so they can have an extra month of bowl practice to get ready for next year. And it's this weird thing of your seniors are kind of already getting ready for the NFL draft and some of your underclassmen. So you want to give them reps, and it's their last chance to show out. But you're starting a lot of things kind of preparing for next year. And this team offensively is going to get that. They're going to get new offensive linemen in. They're going to get some early enrollees in. We'll have updates on that over the next few weeks. And Bo Nix is going to get more chances to develop chemistry with Anthony Schwartz, which he still hasn't really had. And then, of course, Seth Williams, which we've seen what that's been able to do, just one offseason there, or a half offseason, really. And you're going to see other guys develop that way. You're going to lose Eli Stove and Will Hastings, but you got a brand new offensive line. You're going to get new, fresh running backs in there. And I think you're going to be able to see kind of different stuff. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. James, thank you so much for your call, bud. I'm glad to hear you're doing well. All right.
Your team.
Greetings, 12 Locked On Seahawks podcast.
Who Dat family, and welcome into this week's Locked On Saints.
Hello to all you Foxborough faithful, Locked On Patriots.
Every day.
Another Victory Monday.
It's officially Throwback Tuesday.
Crossover Wednesday episode.
Thursday Night Football.
It is Red Friday edition.
When it comes to the biggest stories.
And so the Chiefs' news story of today is, unfortunately, at this point in the season, it is continuing to be injuries.
You need to be locked on.
We've touched about it on this show and all over Twitter and all that.
And all of a sudden we have a great football team with a championship defense, a franchise quarterback, a running game that can't be stopped. This is exactly why we watch football.
Good quarterbacks are maximized in good systems, and that's exactly what we're seeing with Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers this season.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
In the Apple Podcast app.
Google Podcasts.
Spotify.
Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your team.
Okay, let's get it. Locked On LSU, your team every day.
Welcome back in to Locked On Bama.
You're going to hear about it all week long on Locked On Buckeyes.
Every day.
Monday through Friday.
When it comes to the biggest stories.
Everybody's talking, and we're not excluded from the mix.
Everything that you could want from a post-game recap, we're going to do.
They're far and away the number one team in the country. Winning at this point is the only thing that matters. It's going to put you in meaningful games later.
You need to be locked on.
Tua is the best of us. He is an incredible kid, immensely talented, and it's such a shame that his fairy tale ending was actually at the beginning.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
In the Apple Podcast app.
Google Podcasts.
Spotify.
Hit us up with those 5 stars, and we're going to be here 5 days a week. 1 star for every day of the week.
Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
If you want to hear more shows like this, well, just go to LockedOnPodcasts.com.
All right, let's go to Tony.
Hello, guys. This is Tony in Savannah.
Hey, Tony.
I got 2 points. One, Michael, you picked Auburn by 3, and you were spot on.
Yeah.
I love your pick. Zach, man, I'm very disappointed in you.
I know.
I mean, how could you not see this coming? Auburn almost scored 50 points. How would you not see that? Anyway, I'm being facetious, but love the show. Love you guys. War Eagle, man, I'm fired up, and I hope y'all are at Toomer's Corner.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate the call. Yeah, how could I have ever predicted that, right? But no, you're right. I'd forgotten that Michael predicted 3 points. I hate he's not in here right now to hear the credit that was given to him. But yeah, I mean, what a crazy game. Holy cow. Thanks for the call, Tony. I appreciate it. Let's see. Taylor's also calling from Savannah. I wonder if you guys know each other.
Hey, guys. This is Taylor over in Savannah, Georgia. Keep it short for you today. I just wanted to say I've been waiting 2 years for that Sean Shivers run. Man, was that explosive.
Yes.
Dude has got so much strength. It's ridiculous.
All right. Thank you, Taylor. Yeah, that was a crazy run. That's going to go down in Auburn lore for a long time, for an absolutely long time. And I think the size has some to do with it, but it's just the whole okay, when is this guy going to burst onto the scene? That was his only touch on Saturday. And boy, he made the most of it. All right, let's go to another one.
War Eagle, guys. That was one of the most entertaining
Iron Bowls of my lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
It was not too overly dramatic, in my opinion. People were saying it was.
I think it was.
It was just entertaining. Enjoy the entertainment, period. I have railed on Gus time and time again. Today's not that day.
Sure.
Congratulations to this group of young men. Congratulations to Auburn as a university. Congratulations to us as Auburn fans. It was fun, entertaining, and for everybody that lives in the state of Alabama, please tell somebody War Eagle every time you see them for the next few weeks at least, because this is something that we don't get to enjoy a whole lot when it's this entertaining. Thanks, guys. Love the podcast. And, one more thing. I know Michael was excited when Sal caught that touchdown. Favorite player ever. War Eagle.
Dang it, I should have played these on a day when Michael was here. I'll make sure he goes back and listens. But yeah, we gave him a hard time about it yesterday. I'm sure a lot of you guys heard that, and he and I were texting after that happened. I'm like, dude, you need to write a letter and apologize to Sal Cannella. He said he's already working on it. He didn't do it yesterday, but he did issue an apology. So yeah, that's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's interesting you say there wasn't a whole lot of drama involved, because I know a lot of the folks that I've talked to were, borderline just freaking out the whole game. And they had good reason. And, it's so cool when you think back about this Iron Bowl. And, a lot of Alabama folks are kind of asking the question, like, why did Auburn fans storm the field? This is kind of like backhanded insult. Like, oh, you beat us, so, why you stormed the field? And Alabama fans aren't the only people to do that. I've seen other fan bases do that all the time. But this game, to me, this game was not about football. I don't think. I'm going to get a little sentimental for a second, but I know a lot of the folks, and I see the numbers from where you guys are listening from, and a lot of folks are listening from out of town. But I know a lot of you guys have grown up Auburn fans, or you went to the school here and now you've moved off, and a lot of folks want to come back, or are waiting to come back and spend some time in it. But the community here locally, they've just been beaten up. And I'm kind of part of it. 2019 has stunk. 2019 has not been a good year. And, Auburn, there have been 4 Auburn policemen shot this year, one of whom, Officer Beekner, lost his life. And, the 23 folks that died from the tornado on March 3rd out in Beauregard, and, it hit Smith Station as well. Obviously, Rod and Paula Bramlett, this was for their children. This was for the Burchams that kind of took them under their wing. The Anaya Blanchard, the kidnapping of Anaya Blanchard and now murder that we've discovered of that. Her family and that story, terrible. Chuck Furlow and his sweet wife, Lynn. And, if you are into sports radio, I'm sure you've listened to The Drive on ESPN 106.7, and Chuck was on there 2 or 3 times a week. And, me personally, I lost some folks in my family this year, specifically my grandmother. And so, it's just been a tough year. And the community needed that. And so I don't think the greatness from Saturday was all about football. A good chunk of it was. But, you saw the students storm the field. And, I'm not thinking about that stuff when I'm a student. And I'm not saying they are or they're not. But I think a lot of the folks, the alumni that were in, they were all kind of in their seats watching the students storm the field. And obviously, to fill up that field, to fill up Pat Dye Field, you need a lot of people more than just the students running on it. But I think a lot of people just kind of sat in their seat and watched, because I think a lot of people knew they needed it. So that's why it meant so much to me. All right.
This is Vinny Iyer, host of Locked On Fantasy Football, with your Locked On Fantasy Football Edge of the Day. The 2019 NFL season has been full of surprises for fantasy football, and none has been bigger of late than what Ryan Fitzpatrick is doing while locked into the Dolphins offense. He delivered another 3-touchdown game against the Eagles in Week 13, with new go-to guy Devontae Parker having his most dominant game yet. The fun can continue for Fitzpatrick as a hot streamer with matchups against the Jets, Giants, and Bengals in a row during the fantasy football playoffs. If you're playing DFS, Fitzpatrick and Parker is a hot stack you can target over the next 3 weeks before the rematch with the Patriots in Week 17. Get the edge in your fantasy football league every day by listening to Locked On Fantasy Football on your preferred podcast provider.
Oh, wow, we only got one more. All right, let's this is about Alabama's schedule. This is a good question.
Hey, Zach. Love the show.
Thank you.
Question or comment, or you can correct me. Did Alabama beat a ranked team all year long? If I'm correct, and I could be wrong, LSU was ranked and Auburn was ranked at the time when they played them, and they never beat a ranked team all year long. Just want to hear your comment, and I love the show. Thank you. War Eagle.
Well, I appreciate you listening, man. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The Alabama's best win this year is against Duke in the season opener. That's their best win. Now, obviously, they took on LSU. They had LSU at home. Then, of course, they played Auburn in the Iron Bowl on the road, and they lost both of those games. And I was talking about this with Painter Sharpless, friend of the program. Of course, he's on ESPN 106.7 as well. I was talking with him about that, and I'm not a huge fan of criticizing people for schedules. I think you can reward people for good schedules, but I'm sure when they scheduled Duke, probably 5 or 6 years ago, I don't know what they expected. They probably didn't expect Duke to be much better than they were at the time. Like when Auburn scheduled Oregon forever ago, Oregon went through a period where they were bad, and then they suddenly got good again. Like Alabama a few years ago scheduled Florida State, and they just kind of lucked up with Florida State, that being kind of the first game where they started to fall apart. And so it's not their fault that they had like a terrible schedule, right? I mean, they happened to not play Florida this year, right? I mean, they just didn't really play anybody from the East because they play Tennessee every year. And it's not really their fault that Tennessee stinks. It's not their fault that every team in the West outside of Alabama, LSU, and Auburn is pretty bad. Because Texas A&M was supposed to be hot stuff coming into the year. I mean, remember when Auburn played them? I mean, Auburn fans were fired up when they went to Texas Station and kind of put it on Kellen Mond and Jimbo Fisher, and it just didn't happen. So I've kind of always I'm in a weird spot when you kind of look at the schedule, and I'm not saying the caller was doing that. But yeah, I mean, to answer the question, Alabama didn't beat anybody this year. Their best win was against Duke. Maybe Tennessee. They're 7-5, but I mean, at the time that they played them, and Tennessee kind of put up a fight against them. So, Alabama has not beaten a ranked team this year. And I'm curious to see if there's any chatter among boosters when they say, Nick Saban, when he goes up against teams that are the same talent tier as him, they can't compete. So that's interesting. And then the flip side of it is he's still found ways to win championships. So that is that's the goal. That's the goal. So I want to do a pivot here for the final few minutes of the show today. Talk a little basketball. Austin center Austin Wiley has been tabbed as the SEC Player of the Week. He's the fourth center in program history to earn the weekly award, which dates back to 1985. So I think that's pretty cool. Averaged 16 points, 10.5 rebounds, en route to being named the MVP of the Legends Classic up in Brooklyn last week. And that's the Tigers' first in-season tournament championship since 2004 when they participated in the San Juan Shootout. And so I'm curious to see, can Wiley keep this statistical output going? 16 points, 10.5 rebounds. And so, that's across 2 games. And those 2 games, they played against teams that supposedly had solid post presence. It did not look like it in Auburn's games. I'm curious to see how much of that was Wiley, how much of that was other teams that those guys have played. I don't think we're going to be able to tell the legitimacy of Auburn's post presence until they get into the heart of SEC play. But that's something that fans should be excited about. There's a lot of hype around Austin Wiley. Was this going to be the year that he finally does it? And I mean, the 2 games that we saw him do last week, this is the best I've ever seen him. And I think a lot of folks agree with me there. So that's kind of crazy. So after those 2 wins, Auburn has now moved up to number 14 in the AP basketball poll. Of course, 7-0 on the season. I believe that's the first time Auburn's ever done that. Don't quote me on that. Yeah, so they play Furman on Thursday. I think Furman was in the tournament a year ago, so that'll be exciting to see how they stack up against Furman. And Auburn is one of the 4 teams in the SEC that's ranked in the AP's top 25. Kentucky is number 9, Tennessee is 17, and Florida is number 24. And so they play Furman on Thursday, then they're off 9 days before the Tigers travel to Birmingham, and they take on St. Louis in the Mike Slive Invitational. So Thursday's game's at 8 o'clock. I hate that. That stinks, but we'll all live with it. We will all live with it. But, yeah, I think 14's right. You know, when they started out 22 and, you know, they were 3 or 4 games in and still 20-something, I'm like, I'm not sold there's 20 teams in the country better than Auburn. Now at 14, it's like, okay, there's probably about 10 teams right now better than Auburn. And so, you know, it gives you a little wiggle room, and Auburn hasn't played one of those ranked teams yet. They've played good teams and teams that are going to make the postseason and teams you would not want to play in the tournament, but they have not, they haven't beaten a ranked team yet. They haven't had the chance to. And so they won't get to do that until SEC play, but man, that's going to be fun. That's going to be crazy. And then I guess kind of tying football and basketball together, Auburn was fined $250,000 by the SEC for storming the field, and I think that's I think it's worth it. It's not my $250,000 to spend, but I just imagine the money that they're going to make from the images of that and the recruiting of that, and I just think they're going to make it back. I think that is a good investment to have. Because they had to know it was going to happen, right? They had to. I mean, I had honestly forgotten that Auburn stormed the field 2 years ago in 2017 in that Iron Bowl. I had forgotten all about that. And I was there, too. I just don't remember that. I was on the field at the end of the game. I just don't remember fans storming the field. But obviously it happened. And so, and rightfully so, they just won the SEC West. So that's, I guess it's a little weird on my part. I guess so. It's such an interesting feeling that the winner of the Iron Bowl isn't playing this weekend, right? Like that's very odd to me. It's an odd feeling because it's like, okay, that's it. Let's watch Georgia and LSU now. But that's going to be a fun. No, it won't be a fun game. I think LSU's going to handle it. But we'll talk more about that game and other stuff throughout this week. Thank you guys so much for listening to the show. Follow me on Twitter at @ZBlackerby. Follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Auburn. Email the show, lockedonauburn@gmail.com. And we'll be back tomorrow. This has been another edition of the Locked On Auburn podcast.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.